You're there again, not remembering it, living it. The room is exactly as it was. The light falls at the same angle. The air feels familiar in a way that makes your chest tighten. You recognize the place before you recognize yourself, your childhood home, an old classroom, a conversation you haven't thought about in years. But this isn't nostalgia. This is not a faded memory or a distorted dream version of the past. This feels hyper-real, sharper, clearer, more emotionally present than the moment ever felt when it originally happened. You hear voices exactly as they were. You feel emotions you thought were gone. And for a brief, unsettling moment, it feels like time itself has folded. You're not dreaming about the past. You are inside it. And when you wake up, something feels wrong. Not because the dream was sad or frightening, but because it was too accurate, too embodied, too alive. Why does the mind sometimes reconstruct the past with more intensity than reality ever had? Why do these dreams feel less like imagination and more like return? Tonight we're exploring one of the most haunting experiences of human consciousness, hyper-realistic dreams of one's own past. Because when the brain replays memory this vividly, it's not reminiscing, it's doing something far more precise and far more revealing. Dreaming about the past is common, but dreaming about it hyper-realistically is something very different. In these dreams, memory does not behave like memory. It behaves like present experience. People report seeing places exactly as they were decades ago. Not approximations, not symbolic stand-ins, but spatially accurate environments. The emotional tone is precise. The timing feels correct. Even minor sensory details appear intact. The texture of furniture, the color of light, the way someone's voice carried in the room. And most strikingly, the dreamer often feels younger, not intellectually, but existentially. The sense of self shifts backward in time, as if identity itself has been temporarily reconstructed from an earlier version. This phenomenon sits at the intersection of autobiographical memory, emotional processing, and REM dreaming. It is not simple recall. It is not imagination. It is a reinstatement. During waking life, memories are usually accessed in fragments. We recall facts, images, or emotions, rarely all at once. But in hyper-realistic past dreams, the brain does something unusual. It reactivates entire memory networks simultaneously. These dreams are often triggered during periods of emotional transition or instability, identity shifts, aging, loss, change of role, unresolved past experiences, long-term stress followed by release. They frequently appear without warning, and their emotional impact can linger long after waking, not as sadness or joy, but as disorientation, because they don't just remind you of who you were, they temporarily make you that person again. From a phenomenological perspective, this is deeply unsettling. We tend to believe that the past is something we remember, not something we can re-enter. These dreams violate that assumption. They suggest that the mind retains the capacity to simulate entire lived worlds, not just images or stories. And this raises a crucial question. Why does the brain sometimes choose to reconstruct the past with such accuracy? And why does it do so in dreams, rather than while awake? To answer that, we need to move beyond description and into psychology, into how identity, emotion, and memory interact when conscious control is relaxed. Psychologically, hyper-realistic dreams of the past are not acts of nostalgia. They are acts of identity reconstruction. In waking life, your sense of self is streamlined. You operate from a current identity, filtering the past into simplified narratives. Who I was, what happened, what it meant. This filtering is necessary. Without it, the mind would be overwhelmed by unresolved emotional complexity. But during sleep, those filters weaken. One of the most important psychological mechanisms involved here is state-dependent memory. Memories are not stored as static files. They are encoded together with emotional states, bodily sensations, and contextual meaning. When the brain enters a sleep state that resembles the emotional tone of the past, vulnerability, openness, reduced control, It can unlock memory networks that are usually inaccessible. This is why these dreams feel lived, not remembered. Another critical factor is ego regression, a normal and temporary process where the mind loosens its attachment to the current self-image. In dreams, especially REM dreams, the ego is less concerned with maintaining continuity across time. It allows earlier versions of the self to resurface, not as concepts, but as experienced identities. You don't think, "I am younger." You simply are. Emotion plays a decisive role. Hyper-realistic past dreams are strongly associated with unfinished emotional integration. These are not always traumatic memories. Often they involve emotionally significant but unresolved periods, moments of belonging, loss, safety, shame, longing, or identity formation. The dream does not recreate the past to relive it. It recreates it to process what was never fully absorbed. The brain chooses realism because realism carries emotional precision. A symbolic dream might distort a memory. A hyper-realistic one preserves it. This allows the mind to revisit emotional details that were muted or ignored when the event originally occurred. In this sense, the dream is not backward-looking, it is corrective. There is also a strong link to life transitions. When people undergo changes that challenge their identity, aging, becoming a parent, ending a relationship, changing careers, the mind often reactivates earlier identity templates. The past becomes relevant again, not as history, but as reference material. The dream reconstructs a former self to evaluate continuity. Who am I now, compared to who I was then? Importantly, these dreams are not signs of regression or psychological weakness. They often occur in introspective, emotionally aware individuals. The mind is not stuck in the past. It is using the past to stabilize the present. Psychologically, hyper-realistic past dreams reveal something unsettling and profound. The self is not archived, it is layered, and under the right conditions, those layers can become fully active again. To understand how the brain is able to reactivate entire lived worlds with such precision, down to sensory and emotional detail, we now need to look at the neuroscience behind memory reenactment during sleep. At the neuroscientific level, hyper-realistic dreams of the past are made possible by a process known as memory reactivation and reinstatement. A mechanism the brain normally uses to consolidate experience, but which can become unusually vivid during certain dream states. Memory is not stored in one place. Autobiographical memories are distributed across networks involving the hippocampus, medial temporal lobe, sensory cortices, and emotional centers such as the amygdala. In waking life, recalling a memory usually activates only fragments of this network. You remember about the past, but you do not re-enter it. During REM sleep, that restriction loosens. REM sleep is characterized by intense activity in the hippocampus and limbic system, combined with reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for reality monitoring, temporal anchoring, and self-continuity. This creates ideal conditions for full network reactivation. Instead of retrieving a memory, the brain replays it as a state. Functional imaging studies show that during REM dreaming, sensory areas of the brain, visual, auditory, even somatosensory cortices, can activate as if real perception were occurring. When an autobiographical memory is reactivated under these conditions, the brain does not treat it as past data. It treats it as current experience. This is why the dream feels present, not remembered. The hippocampus plays a central role here. Normally, it acts as a gatekeeper, deciding when memories are retrieved and how strongly. During REM sleep, hippocampal control becomes more permissive. Memory fragments that are usually kept separate, places, emotions, bodily sensations, are allowed to synchronize. When emotional relevance is high, the amygdala amplifies this synchronization. Emotion acts like a signal boost. Memories tied to identity, attachment, or unresolved meaning receive priority. The stronger the emotional charge, the more complete the reactivation. This explains why hyper-realistic past dreams often involve formative periods rather than random events. Neurochemistry further intensifies the effect. REM sleep is dominated by acetylcholine, which enhances cortical plasticity and internal imagery. At the same time, norepinephrine, which helps tag experiences as present or urgent, is largely absent. Without this chemical marker of now, the brain loses its ability to distinguish temporal context. The result is temporal collapse. Past experiences are no longer labeled as past. They are instantiated as present moment reality. This mechanism is closely related to what neuroscientists call neural replay, observed in both sleep and wakeful rest. Normally, replay is brief and fragmented. In hyper-realistic dreams, replay becomes immersive because the brain's reality-checking systems are offline. Importantly, this is not memory error. It is memory functioning at full resolution, without the constraints of waking consciousness. The brain is not confused about time. It is temporarily uninterested in it. To see how researchers have observed and documented this phenomenon in real people through studies, case reports, and experimental findings, we now need to move from neural theory to empirical evidence. Hyper-realistic dreams of the past are not anomalies hidden at the fringes of sleep science. They appear repeatedly across research on autobiographical memory, REM sleep, and emotional processing, often under different names, but with strikingly similar descriptions. One of the most relevant bodies of work comes from studies on memory reactivation during REM sleep. Researchers using sleep lab awakenings found that when participants were woken during REM and asked to report dream content, a significant subset described experiences that were not symbolic or distorted, but experientially precise, entire past environments reconstructed with emotional and sensory detail. In these cases, EEG and fMRI data showed strong coactivation between the hippocampus, memory indexing, visual and auditory cortices, perceptual simulation, the amygdala, emotional intensity. This pattern closely resembled the neural signature of reliving rather than remembering. Longitudinal dream diary studies provide additional evidence. Participants who recorded dreams over months showed a clear pattern. Hyper-realistic past dreams clustered around periods of identity stress, such as aging milestones, major life changes, or unresolved emotional transitions. The dreams were not frequent, but when they occurred, they were unusually vivid and emotionally destabilizing. Clinical psychology offers some of the most compelling documented cases. Patients undergoing psychotherapy, particularly depth-oriented or trauma-informed therapy, often report sudden, hyper-realistic dreams of childhood or early adulthood. Therapists note that these dreams frequently coincide with breakthroughs in emotional insight. Importantly, the dreams do not replay traumatic events directly. Instead, they reconstruct emotionally formative contexts with extreme realism. Researchers interpret this as contextual memory reintegration, the mind revisiting a past state in order to reevaluate it from a safer psychological distance. There are also striking parallels in neuroscience research on reminiscence bumps, the tendency for adults to recall memories from adolescence and early adulthood more vividly than other periods. Sleep studies suggest that these memory-rich periods are more likely to appear in dreams with high realism, especially when current life circumstances echo unresolved themes from those years. Perhaps most revealing are cases involving lucid and near-lucid dreamers. Some individuals report becoming aware they are dreaming while inside a hyper-realistic past dream. When asked to describe the experience, they consistently note that the realism of the memory world feels more stable than typical dreams. The environment does not warp. The narrative does not dissolve. The past holds together. Across all these studies and reports, one conclusion quietly emerges. These dreams are not about the past itself, they are about unfinished integration. The brain is not replaying memory for entertainment. It is revisiting a lived state to renegotiate meaning. And that brings us to the final question. Not about dreaming, but about identity itself. If the past can be reactivated this completely, what does that say about who we are, right now? Hyper-realistic dreams of the past leave behind a strange and quiet unease. Not because they are frightening, but because they challenge something we rely on without noticing, the idea that the past is gone. When you wake from one of these dreams, it doesn't feel like remembering. It feels like returning. For a few minutes, or sometimes much longer, the emotional residue lingers. You don't just recall who you were, you feel how it was to be that person. The posture of your thoughts, the weight of your emotions, the assumptions you carried without question. And then, slowly, the present reasserts itself. Psychologically, these dreams reveal a truth that is both unsettling and deeply human. Identity is not linear. The mind does not discard old versions of the self. It stores them intact. Under the right conditions, reduced control, emotional relevance, openness, the brain can reassemble an earlier self with astonishing precision. Not as memory, but as lived experience. This does not mean we are trapped by the past. It means the past remains available. Dreaming makes this visible. These dreams often arrive during moments of change, vulnerability, or reevaluation, when the present self is unstable and the mind searches for continuity. The past is not revisited to escape the present, but to inform it, to test it, to renegotiate who you are becoming. In this way, hyper-realistic past dreams are not regressions. They are conversations across time. The mind asks, what have I carried forward? What have I abandoned too quickly? What still needs to be integrated? And when the dream ends, it leaves you with more than imagery. It leaves you with perspective. Perhaps the most unsettling realization is also the most comforting one. You are not a single moment moving forward. You are a layered mind, carrying every version of yourself that ever mattered. And sometimes in sleep, the brain opens a door, not to relive the past, but to finally understand it.